5 stars. Great product, just what I needed.
5 stars, amazing. Cannot recommend strongly enough.
4 stars, top quality, simply awesome. This was life-changing, phenomenal. It beat every expectation I had and then some. Honestly, I was skeptical at first seeing the price, but it works better than the name brand version. I'll probably pick up a second for my daughter, and who knows, maybe I'll buy another one for myself.
1 star. Danger, poison, side effects, urgent. This is fatal. Please, 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 please read this. It's all I can do. I can't get them to remove this item from the store page. I've tried reporting it online 100 times, but nothing happens. Maybe they don't care. The police won't take it seriously either. Just please, even if you don't read this, please don't make the same mistake I did. Don't fall in love with love. Love is cruel, ugly, hateful, and blind. Love is coarse and bitter, like the ground coffee you find in the trash. Love chokes, strangling every joyful pulse from your veins. People love the illusions, or delusions, of love. But anybody who has seen love purified and distilled would know love's true awfulness and horrors, and above all, its foolishness. You know the saying, you can fool some people all the time, and all people some of the time? Well, sometimes. We're all fooled by love. For the former 16-year-old me, I was a fool for a guy. His name was Adrian Mathers. And back in high school, he was my dirty blonde dream walking the halls, the faint scent of roasted walnuts in his wake. In my eyes, he was perfect. He was smart, but not bookishly reserved. Athletic, minus the bruising jock attitude. And funny, without being a shameless class clown. Of course, his visible muscle tone and high cheekbones certainly contributed, but so did the cute single dimple from his confident and constant half-smile. Okay, this may seem irrelevant to the issue at hand, but I swear to you, all this is important to understand the danger of this love potion. Or, I don't know, maybe I just need some place to vent and mourn. Confess. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's throwing myself a pity party. Anyway, what stole my dumb heart above all was, despite being one of the popular guys in school, Adrian was exceedingly kind. He only had nice things to say about everybody, never participating in gossip and backbiting. He was so nice, he made everyone else around him nicer. For example, there was a special needs student, Isaac, and while at the start of the year everybody either teased him or did their best to ignore him, Adrian actually took the time to chat with Isaac. Not ironically or with ulterior motives, just genuinely striking up a conversation. Asking him how it was going, about his interests, normal stuff. Every day, he did this. Slowly, people stopped teasing Isaac, and as the months passed, more and more people began to be friendly too, wishing Isaac a good day or wanting him to tell them one of his many space facts that he knew offhand. That's how Adrian was. He brought out the good in those around him by virtue of the good in him. And I melted for the fantasy he'd find the good in me. Someday, he'd take me away beneath the stars in his used Saturn Eon, and we'd have our first kiss. At the time, that was pure fantasy. I was certain Adrian didn't even know my name when I first started crushing on him. Or the rest of the year, for that matter. Luckily, the goddess of love and fate must have heard my prayers, because Adrian and I were assigned as lab partners in our junior year chemistry class. That semester was magical. To me, at least. It seemed like we hit it off immediately. We worked great together. I did most of the planning and note-taking, while he had no problems lighting the Bunsen burners and mixing the reagents. All the while, we'd be laughing and having fun. We started talking more out of class, too, even if we always had to start talking about chemistry first. However, our conversations were never stilted or awkward, and we'd soon be discussing deep topics like our fights with our parents and the reasons why we both wanted to leave our hometown. I just hated the bitterly cold winters here, but he wanted to leave because he never wanted to feel like his home was stuck and glued in one place. And so he'd imagined he'd always keep moving places every few years.
I just want the freedom of it, you know?
His nose scrunched up when he said the word freedom, and I felt he meant the word differently than how others use the term. Eventually, though, the semester was almost over, meaning I wouldn't have an excuse to talk to him anymore. I gathered what tepid courage I could, and I asked the question. After the test, do you want to go see a movie? Together? He blinked a moment.
Like a date?
Yeah, I confirmed. He half-cocked his smile.
Okay then.
It was just that easy. My legs nearly buckled when I made it around the corner, but the butterfly swirling around my head and heart made it all worth it. And that first date was incredible. He held me through the entire movie, and as he dropped me off in my house, he stared at me until I stopped talking. And then he kissed me. His kiss left a trembling need on my lips long after we parted. We made plans for another date immediately. That one didn't go quite as well. We were making out at his house. His parents weren't home. Although I was nearly sick with a bundle of nerves in my stomach, I couldn't stop imagining everything that would come of this. And suddenly, though, Adrian stopped. I couldn't figure out why. He cut the date short there. When we spoke again after that night, he told me the most crushing words I've ever heard. He sighed and said,
I just feel we're better as friends. I'm sorry. I tried, but I just don't see you as more than that.
I never told anybody about our fleeting time together, or the pain I felt. Even long after, I never said a word. There's a million breakup songs out there. Each can explain the emotions I felt better than I could. Just go over to the iTunes store or Spotify and buy a couple. You don't want to hear more from me. Although part of me refused to put the pain into my own words, because if I said exactly how I felt, then it really would be over, and no matter how much healing I did over the months and years, I didn't want us to be over. Even if that was what we were. We were little more than acquaintances when high school ended. Anyway, life happened after that. Got accepted into college, drifted away from my fair weather friends, made one or two better friends. During my studies, I dated twice. The first relationship fizzled, not a lot of chemistry besides my crippling desperation when we met at a party. The second guy I dated, Nate, we had chemistry all right. Too much, in fact. Which is why it blew up in a fiery spectacle. Much like a plane full of TNT crashing into a fireworks factory. Fun to witness at a distance. Not so fun while screaming aboard the disintegrating aircraft. During this time, I was doing my teaching practicum, and I met Mrs. Joni Rennick. She was upbeat, gregarious, positive attitude, thoughtful. A teacher loved by all the kids, always putting others before herself. A mentor that I quickly did my best to model myself after. To me, she was almost a saint in her selfless attitude. However, after a few short months, I discovered her one flaw. Selfishness of a different sort ate away her body. A greed called cancer. She wouldn't survive the year. Where we meet Adrian again is at Mrs. Rennick's funeral. During the sermon, Jody's brother mentioned how the Mathers family put Jody through school, but my brain didn't link the surname together until the reception, where I spotted Adrian comforting the much older brother of Jody. I tapped him on the shoulder. "Hey, stranger." Fortunately, I had chosen my more stylish black dress of the two hung in my closet. Adrian turned to me in his well-fitting three-piece suit and his eyes seemed to brighten.
Kim?
Still stuck in town, I see.
Nah,
He shook his head.
just here for the funeral.
I knew Adrian traveled around a lot, but I'd forgotten in that instant rush to say hello. After that, the conversation was breezy, like summer, just like I remember it. I told him how Jody was a role model for me. He told me how Jody was his babysitter for like 10 years, hence the comment about his family putting her through school. The conversation was getting more animated, but with the funeral going on around us, we instead agreed to meet later that week for coffee before his flight left. Doubts crept in almost immediately. After a few minutes, I convinced myself that I'd imagined the renewed romantic chemistry. The sparks were sputters. Flirting was just friendliness. Those hints of desire were merely shimmers of a polite facade. But other than bite my cuticles and nervously rock my legs, I didn't know what to do. I'd be meeting with him soon. It was literally my last chance at a second chance. So I started drinking a bottle of leftover tequila and set off online in search of answers. In a few short hours, my browser was clogged with Facebook profiles, self-help blogs, and more cheesy dating advice than my hairdresser on a particularly chatty day. It all seemed so useless and fake. None of this would actually work. On a whim, I decided to search for a love potion. Years ago, I went through a bit of an alternative religion, Wiccan phase, which is why I'd expected silly home brews of supermarket spices and willow leaves, which would vary in quality between inadequate tea and a putrid sludge. And I did find results like that, along with movie references, tacky perfumes, and a whole bunch of other crap. A few pages in, though, I was intrigued by one particular link. Licorice flavored love potion. The name was less arresting than the web address. The fact it was being sold by this very website made me think. Don't they have standards? They can't actually be selling a fake love potion. I convinced myself it was probably nothing more than a candy with the licorice flavored appendage, but tipsy me was curious. No kitschy hearts or playful colors greeted me, but the Art Deco bottle with sharp glass lines and a black fluid within. This was a minor shock as I'd pictured sweet red licorice, not black. More than that, though, as you can see, the product description above makes it seem completely sincere. Force your love to give you love by feeding them this love potion, was the line that particularly stood out to me. Normally, love potions describe themselves in more poetic and saccharine terms. To see one bluntly advertise how you always imagine a love potion is supposed to work was refreshing and exhilarating. My cursor hovered over the Add to Cart button. Except the price was fairly steep for what amounted to little more than a brief thrill. It's not like it would actually work. Besides, it probably wouldn't arrive in time anyway. And how would I get him to drink it anyway? Licorice wasn't exactly an inconspicuous taste. He'd know if I slipped it into his coffee. All those valid reasons were no match for serendipity. See, it was in that moment I remembered Adrian liked licorice because he and his circle of friends once had a silly argument about whether licorice was the worst thing we ever were tricked into believing was candy or a delicious and unfairly maligned treat from the gods. Adrian was firmly on the pro-licorice side of that particular debate. He likes licorice, and I found a licorice-flavored love potion. That's kind of like fate, right? The loudly advertised free shipping was hard to beat, too. The class I'd been teaching was outside for recess when I got a lesson of how fate really works.
Sorry, I have to leave town early.
I wasn't even upset, really. In a way, I was relieved. Here I'd been stressing out like some stupid little girl over a simple cup of coffee. Some adult I was.
My flight leaves tomorrow morning. Can we meet tonight?
And just like that, I was a girl again with hope. And pressure. Lots and lots of pressure. This would be my one and only chance, and I knew I had no magic on my side. I rushed home to prepare. When I spotted the plain brown package patiently expecting me at my doorstep, I didn't even consider it was the love potion. From my tequila buzz, I barely remembered ordering it, but I certainly didn't expect it to be delivered so soon. In the past, I've paid for the princely leisure of 2-day shipping on a few occasions, but I've never had anything arrive in under 24 hours before. After I peeled away the tape, cardboard, and excessive layers of bubble wrap, I found the ornate bottle delicately inlaid within a former-fitting encasement of crunchy styrofoam. Curiously, the liquid inside was clear and not the jet black like in the picture. Although I'd solve this colorful discrepancy soon, later I'd only have unanswered theories gnawing at my mind to explain why. Wrapped around the deco neck of the Art Deco bottle was frayed twine linking a bottle to the round paper bag. Wrapped around the deco neck of the bottle was frayed twine linking the bottle to a round paper tag. On it were these 3 simple instructions. 1. Mix a drop of your blood in with a love. 2. Give this now activated love to the intended target. 3. Enjoy the love. There were no ingredients list or warnings or even a brand logo. The first step was what gave me pause. A drop of blood struck me as hardcore, which was fine by me, except it also seemed unsanitary. Still, I only had a bit of time before needing to head out for the coffee shop, so I got a pin from my cupboard, ready to do it right there and then. I popped open the cork cap like a bottle of champagne and was blasted by the distinct scent of licorice. "Here goes nothing," I said as I pricked my finger and squeezed a single drop of blood. On my skin, the scarlet bulge swelled and then fell into the clear liquid below. Immediately on contact, thin black roots grew sinking from the surface and slowly burrowed to the bottom of the glass. Without mixing or shaking, spindles of blackness jutted out from these roots like the rime of frost. They intersected and crisscrossed until all crystal light was woven shut and nothing but a solid, impenetrable darkness remained. Huh. Neat. Is all the gravitas I could spare for that damning event. I recapped the bottle and casually tossed it in my handbag. We met at the coffee shop, he with a simple white button-down shirt and striped tie, me with a little black skirt and secretive black bottle. I did my best to pry a passionate conversation from him. That's what I read, is guys like it when a gal shows an interest listening to his interests. It seemed to be going quite well. He was getting animated and excited, swinging his arms in exaggerated chopping motions, although to be honest, the stories of his travels weren't that interesting. Not secondhand anyway. After the first story, hearing about a traditional meal with colorful locals gets old whether it's in Central Asia, Chile, or Uganda. Still, the evening was progressing so well I forgot all about the love potion. It was sometime after sunset, though, when Adrian glimpsed at his watch and began checking it repeatedly every minute or so. I hesitated. "Do you need to leave soon?" He rubbed his neck apologetically.
Yeah. Early morning flight and all that. But it's nice catching up like this. We should do it again sometime.
I panicked a bit. No, I stammered, practically jumping from my uncomfortable seat. "You can't leave just yet." He was surprised by my abrupt outburst.
Well, it's not like I was planning on leaving right this second.
They sell this really great kombucha here. You've tried kombucha before, right?
Yeah, it's okay, I guess.
Then you gotta try this one. It's the best. He stared at me in mild bewilderment. "Trust me, my treat. Let me just go." Using both hands, I pointed towards the barista behind the till and wandered off before he could object. After a single step, I twisted back around awkwardly, snatching up my bag as I trotted to the counter. I was quickly devolving into a flustered mess. How could this be ending so soon? I thought everything had felt like it had gone great. Like it was fate fixing her mistake. What happened? Was it something I said? I barely remember saying anything. While I ordered, fishing my credit card out for payment, The black vial clanked softly against my keys. If the barista noticed me spike Adrian's kombucha tea, she gave no indication. And I'm back. Here, try it. Don't be worried if it tastes a little funky. It's supposed to. He took a sip and squinted his eyes.
This tastes like licorice.
He nodded
I like licorice.
and took another big sip. I let out a sigh I didn't know I was holding in. Nothing seemed to happen, though. There was no dramatic sound or cue. Adrian carried on like normal, checking his watch periodically. Dim sunset hues shone with the soft interior lighting over the plain wooden tables. The clatter and tinkle of cups and mugs accompanied the racket back and forth of other couples talking as usual. No magic appeared to save me. Disappointment gripping my throat, our own conversation drifted listlessly to the one subject I promised myself I wouldn't breach. Why did you... Back in school, I shifted in my rigid seat, adjusting a troublesome crease in my skirt. Why did you break up with me? Adrian sputtered on his kombucha. You never really gave me a proper answer. Just said something about how it wouldn't work out, how you had this feeling. But back then you didn't describe it. My head knows how impossible it is to describe a feeling, but my heart hated what my head said. Some say heartbreak and its ache is bitter like that, except it never tasted bitter to me. Astringent, yes. It tastes like choking down harsh medicine that will never cure the sickness eating away inside. But definitely not bitter. If anything, a broken, unrequited love is the opposite. Too sweet. It's an overly syrupy saccharine taste that immediately promises to fulfill your hungering desire soon. Soon, you'll have what you crave. Like the other sweet things before it promises you'll be made whole again soon. Quickly, through the hope of those promises, is betrayed with a burnt rubber toxicity at the back of the palate, as a synthetic and fake lie of that sweetness sears into the back of your throat. Once swallowed, the taste continues to ferment, unsettled, a bubbling fizz, belching up at the slightest jostle, a yeasty, malty corpse on the sugary fruit that once was as it decays and moldens. In the end, you're still left with the lingering aroma of desiccated flowers left to rot untended in the heat of the wilting sun. Or the dusty scent of unused spices, uselessly cluttering the chambers of your heart, a mouth-watering sour reminder of the nourishment you'll never have. In other words, heartbreak is its own flavor. Words are made inadequate as much as you are left to feel. Adrian still struggled giving shape to his answer. He looked squarely at me, and I could feel myself drowning in the cruel sympathy watering his eyes.
Kim, I wasn't who you needed me to be.
It's not you, it's me? Is that it? Don't give me that bullcrap. I slapped my palms flat, clapping on the table. A few other patrons stopped and stared. So what I said next, I barely whispered. Be honest. Tell me you weren't attracted to me. I was too ugly, too weird, too awkward, too annoying. Because that's the truth, isn't it? You just didn't want me. As long and often I thought those words, never before had I said them out loud. For what it's worth, I didn't cry then. Not a single tear was shed. No, all my tears dried long before that moment of release. Actually, it felt pretty good to say it. Ripping off a scab is often a most pleasant wound. The wound which struck Adrian's expressions was too much to bear, though. Goodbye, Adrian. I bolted, escaping. Behind me, Adrian protested, but I didn't stop. I didn't stop when I made it to the exit. I didn't stop out on the cold, shivering street. I only stopped as I fumbled for my keys in front of my crappy Subaru.
Kim, wait.
His hand hooked my elbow and I shook it off immediately.
Kim, just listen. Please?
Without turning, I stopped.
Look, I was attracted to you, okay? I like spending time with you, talking to you. I mean, back then I could even see a future for us together.
each daggered word carved into my back. Then why?
Because that's not who I am, Kim. It's not. I wanted you, and you wanted me, but it wasn't what I needed. I needed more than...
Me? There was a heavy sigh from over my shoulder.
Yeah. I said I saw our future. And I saw us slowly growing apart. Two strangers who were never really that similar to begin with. I saw the rage and resentment I'd feel for you, tying me down, holding me back to this place.
I would have left this place for you.
Would you, Kim? Would you really? Your idea of leaving town was to eventually move to the city. Your version of travel was an annual trip to the coast or maybe the occasional Caribbean resort.
There was the low crackle of a scuffing shoe on asphalt. A step closer.
Kim, as much as it hurts, we're not the people the other needs.
Except you didn't even try. You're a coward. That's what you are, a coward.
A coward, huh?
There was a dry chuckle.
Yeah, that's just who I am. So don't you think you deserve someone better?
But I wanted to argue, change his mind. I wanted to spit insults, hurt him in all the ways I'd hoped he'd stop hurting me. I wanted to scream at him how he was an idiot, how there was no one better than him. Of course, my mind was falling into itself, my senses telling me to finally move on despite being trapped by the senselessness of never letting go or getting a grip, but given nothing to hold on to. There is nothing lonelier than being apart from the person right beside you. Only then did I cry. Each sob folded over me like a rolling wave, and as tears washed the hope from my eyes, I felt a gentle touch on my back.
Hey now. Don't cry.
I kept crying.
Please, Kim, don't do this.
There was now genuine pain in the once soft edges of Adrian's tone. His hand slipped up my shoulder and he tugged me around, spinning me.
Kim, come on. Look at me.
Instead, I stared down at our intertwined shadows.
Kim, please.
He lifted my chin up so I had no choice but to face him. And all I saw was his blurry shape.
Will this make you happy?
His lips met mine in a tender caress. I jumped back, jolting. What are you doing?
I
Why
love
are
you, Kim. I can't bear to see you upset.
He leaned in again. This time, I pressed in closer. The depth of our kiss was deeper than the well of all my doubts. We found ourselves eclipsed by an infinite connection. How I wish we could have stayed in that moment forever. Back then, I didn't even consider the subtle licorice aroma lingering on his breath. When I awoke midday, I found Adrian watching me from his side of the bed.
Morning.
Morning, I replied, bleary-eyed and unsure of the hour.
Sorry, I was staring. You know you're even prettier when you're asleep.
Really? I wanted to tease him a little. Am I that annoying while awake?
No, not at all. I just meant... what I meant was...
His panic seemed exaggerated, but luckily I stopped playing along. Relax, lover boy, I was just teasing. He visibly relaxed, and I took a long breath in, rubbing my eyes. What smells so good?
That? Well, I made my special breakfast. Just for you. A goat cheese and roasted walnut omelet.
Ooh, how fancy. I sat up. Wait, hold on. Where'd you get the walnuts? I didn't own any walnuts, or goat cheese for that matter. It was only then I realized he was fully dressed, despite lying next to me.
I went out and bought some.
Adrian, you didn't have to do that. Secretly, though, my heart skipped at the thought he went so far out of his way to make me happy. Little did I know how far that would be. The meal he made looked incredibly delicious. A golden roll of egg folded over lush greens and earthy chunks of walnut. The entire thing glimmered, gleaming with melted butter and maple syrup, its sweetness watering my mouth. I cut off a bite and ate it.
Well?
It's good.
Are you sure? You made a face.
No, I didn't know how it would be cold is all.
Oh, I lost track of time.
He lurched, grabbing the tray.
Let me heat that back up for you.
And like that, he was up and gone. While I waited, I searched my phone in the rumpled heaps tossed about the room, eventually finding it in the corner with my left shoe. The time wasn't as late as I thought, but there were several missed calls from the school I was supposed to be teaching at right now. I decided to worry about that later and instead check my messages. Most of them were demands to know about my absence. One, though, was from Nate, my ex, the one with too much chemistry. I rolled my eyes and tried ignoring that message too. Except I glimpsed Nate claim to be on my way over now to finally pick up my... Crap! What did he want this time? I thought, dreading the oncoming confrontation. I wasn't about to let Nate ruin my great new day. I tossed on some clothes, which hadn't been discarded haphazardly on the floor, and went out to meet Adrian in the kitchen where the scent of roasted walnuts hung heavy in the air. He was standing over the stove, which didn't immediately strike me as odd until I heard the muted metal clinking of something hard being tossed around in a pot. Is everything okay? I asked.
Yep.
He said casually.
Just cooking you a fresh omelet.
Why didn't you just nuke the other one in the microwave?
Well, I considered it, but the microwave would make the egg all rubbery, so I decided to just start from scratch. It really is best fresh. Fresh egg, fresh cheese, freshly chopped and toasted walnuts. The works.
I saw the knife and cutting board next to a pile of broken walnut husks. Wait, are those whole walnuts? I observed aloud. In the back of my head, the calculus was slowly adding up. Adrian got up, went out, bought groceries, came back, cooked a full meal, and that meal then had time to get cold. Adrian, you really didn't have to do all this for me. He paused, turning to me, his grin nowhere to be found, and a deathly seriousness stretched across his stony expression.
Of course I did, Kim. All of it. You are worth all of it.
There wasn't even a moment to react before I heard the door unlock. Geez, already, I muttered. Nate erupted from the entryway as a ruptured boil. He was halfway into the living room when he abruptly stopped cold in his ugly azure bomber jacket. He turned, jumping.
Kimmy, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at work?
What am I doing here? This is my apartment, Nate.
Relax, alright? I'm only here for my PS4 and... Is that your new beau? Oh, I'm real sorry I interrupted your love nest, Kimmy.
At that time, I thought, screw him. He wasn't the least bit apologetic. Nate was nothing more than a selfish jerk who I never should have left the key with. Nate, leave! I want you gone! Now! That's the last clear thing I remember speaking to Nate. I want you gone, I remember repeating several times. Yeah, I want you gone. Yeah, I definitely said that more than once. After that, our yelling match quickly devolved into a trade of tirades and throat-shredding screams. No communication, just simple animalistic howls for dominance. Heat and friction. A rolling, boiling fire of emotion. This was when Adrian stepped between us. I remember my heart melting at that time. His strong, confident shoulders looked like they were ready to save the day, like he always had. Adrian seemed like he would solve everything with a kind word and a half-cocked smile. Instead, there was a lunge, followed by a wet gasp for air. I couldn't quite see it, so I chose not to believe it, except I had no choice but to accept the spray of blood splattering the floor. What did Nate do to Adrian? That was my first concern. That was my only concern. Of course, as the two of them spun further into view, I saw clearly that it was Nate's neck split open, a clumsy knife widening a slit in his larynx, scarlet ink staining the gaps in his confused and crooked teeth. Nate was a motionless heap on the floor before I spoke again. Nate, are you okay? I asked like a complete idiot, as if I didn't already understand Adrian murdered Nate mere moments after seeing him. Adrian turned, his white shirt a chaotic pollock of darkening red. The blood-wrapped kitchen knife weighed heavy in his grip.
Don't worry. That man's gone now.
What did you do? I asked, once again dumbly. once again questioning the obvious fact of Adrian slicing Nate's neck open right in front of me. But what else are you supposed to say? Other than nothing. Saying nothing is the only other viable alternative. It would be funny if it weren't so tragic, the way our minds default to meaningless phrases when there's nothing to say. There are no uncomfortable silences when you're in love, or so they say.
I got rid of him. For you. Don't you see I did it for you?
I retreated back, stepping further into the kitchen, to where burning walnuts permeated the room. No, I didn't want this. Not this. My fingers tangled in my hair as they massaged my temples in futility.
Oh, God.
True terror widened on Adrian's face.
You're upset. You didn't want this at all. I ruined everything. Oh, God.
He put the knife to his own neck with the blade scraping his burgeoning, unshaved stubble. Stop! I ran over, nearly tackling into Adrian. I groped at his arm, but the tension in his muscles were indomitable, gazing up at him in the cold light of day. I could now see the black stains stuck to Adrian's teeth, and even the shadows blotting the edges of his eyes. This was me. This was my fault. This love potion, it poisoned Adrian's mind, turned him into something else. This thing in front of me. It's okay. It's fine, I reassured him. I'm just worried you'll get arrested. He put the knife down, his expression relaxed, softening.
Don't you worry your pretty little head.
He kissed my forehead.
I will take care of the mess.
My mind drowned in a haze of confusion, from the pool of blood at my feet to the not Adrian figure tenderly embracing my shoulders. From then on, he lovingly ushered me to the bathroom. There, he cleaned me from all the blood. He carried me to bed, brushing the hair from my face. Carefully and methodically, he washed away his exit from my room. From behind the door, I've heard all sorts of noises, heavy grunting noises of exertion and effort, scrubbing, sawing sounds. The clunking thuds of footfalls and limbs falling. Every so often, not Adrian has returned, carrying a cup of tea or a grilled cheese on a plate. He offered these to me like gifts, and then he'd lean in for a loving kiss. Of course, I'd pull away, although I recognized the pain that flashed behind his eyes each time I rejected him, told him no, and I'd force myself to reassure him in other ways. I was the one who first gave him my love, after all. It is well past sundown now, and Adrian left several hours ago, heaving bags with him as he went. I've been a little more than a wreckage on my bed, the same bed that we shared, wondering where my skin ends and the sheets begin. The Adrian that I loved isn't the Adrian who loves me. I don't love the Adrian who loves me, but I know exactly where I can buy his love.
Gross. I hate Liquorice and they don't take returns. Gave 2 stars for prompt delivery.
Hi everyone, it's me, Michelle Renee, but you can call me Giggles. I couldn't log into my Patreon for a while, so I've deleted it and I've made a new one. So now I'm finally back to giving a shout out to my patrons. Eric Cifuentes, Andrea Sanderson London, Lawrence Wallen, Geek Sanctuary, and Melissa Perez. If you want to become a patron of mine or just donate a couple of bucks, there are links to my Patreon, Coffee, and I've also started a Throne in case that interests anybody. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.